Hello and welcome to my next video. Now, as promised, I'm doing it a few days early before I get back to the more old schoolers on the main 8 divisions, but I'm opening up another division, minimum weight, by highlighting the career of one of the great lower weight fighters of the modern era, Ricardo Lopez. Of course, fought his whole career unbeaten with a massive title fight record. Let us go through his main career, beginning with his main opponents. So this outstanding little fighter, starts out with 2 fights against Rosendo Alvarez. Of course, he had the draw and then, of course, defeated him in a rematch. Rosendo Alvarez, a very, very good fighter down there. He also held win over fantastic Thai fighter Saman Sorjaturong, a fighter I've talked about a lot, who, after losing to Ricardo Lopez, went on a long title run himself as world champion and was also a very dangerous puncher. So Saman Sorjaturong is a very good win for Ricardo Lopez. Good afternoon, Martin. Good to see you, buddy. Next up is Kermin Gardia. Ricardo Lopez fought and defeated him once. He also fought in a singular fight Hideyuki Ohashi, also scoring a win. Next up is a win over Manny Melkor. Ricardo Lopez then also defeated Zolani Petolo, before then also scoring a win over former world champion Ratanapol Saw Voropin, before then gaining further wins over Alex Sanchez and so following that, on to contenders. He also defeated Will Grigsby in a singular fight before also gaining win over Ala Villamore. Next up is Roxy with the more modern fighters. The only 2 modern fighters I've done are actually David Hay and now Ricardo Lopez, and already you see a big difference from the old schoolers. Will have 15 fights against him, 4 fights against him, 9 fights against him, 12 fights against him, 6 fights against him. You see the modern fighters generally stick to 1 per opponent. Fighters like Pacquiao, etc. are quite rare actually, in many ways in modern era. You'll see that as we do more modern careers later on the main divisions. There will of course be more modern fighters on these divisions because they are only modern divisions. So next up after Rocky Lynn, Ricardo Lopez also defeated Jose Luis Cepeda, before then also gaining win over capable Pretty Boy Lucas. The final name on slide 1 is Surachai Saying Morakot, whom Ricardo Lopez also defeated. So there's his first slide. Let us go on to the second slide for Ricardo Lopez. He beat Javier Vargas, in a singular fight before also gaining singular wins over Andy Tabernas, Moncol Charoen, and Anucha Pothong. So from the main opponents there, there are 20 fights highlighted there. Now Ricardo Lopez was unbeaten, of course, so he has no defeats, and from those 20 fights he has 19 wins with only that 1 draw, of course, to Rosendo Alvarez. Very good fighter Rosendo Alvarez, of course, whom Ricardo Lopez also defeated. So he defeated every fighter he faced. He didn't stay unbeaten his whole career in terms of no blemishes. He was unbeaten. He just has the draw, but he also avenged that draw. So let's not get into that. So there's his main opponent's breakdown. Now, one thing about the career of Ricardo Lopez when we get to his rated opponents, in fact I'll highlight that when we get there, but it's just another little point to remember on his career. So going on to his stats on KOs and rounds box. Now Ricardo Lopez scored 38 knockouts in his career. He scored 18 knockouts in 3 rounds or less. He also scored 5 first round wins. Now Lopez scored 6 KOs against champions, 0 KOs against Hall of Famers. He scored 1 KO against a pound for pound fighter, and Ricardo Lopez scored 5 KOs against rated fighters, although that number is slightly limited for a reason I'll discuss on the rated opponents slide. So in rounds box, Ricardo Lopez fought a total of 337 rounds. He fought a total of 189 title fight rounds, and he also fought 77 rounds against champions. Never fought a Hall of Famer up to now, so he has no rounds against Hall of Famers. He also fought just the 2 rounds against pound for pound fighters. And in reduced numbers, you think reduced for a modern fighter? There is a reason though. So in reduced numbers against rated opponents, Ricardo Lopez fought 70 rounds against top 10 fighters, 41 rounds against top 3 fighters, and 0 rounds against ring champions. So on we go to the slide against champions. Ricardo Lopez had 10 fights against champions with an unbeaten record of 9 wins, no loss and 1 draw. Ricardo Lopez thus defeated 9 individual champions. They were Rosendo Alvarez, Samanso Jaturan, Kermin Gardia, Hideyuki Ohashi, Manny Melkor, Zolani Peterlo, Ratanapol Saw Voropin, Alex Sanchez and Kyung Yun Lee. So they are the 9 champions, and from those 9 champions, Ricardo Lopez stopped or knocked out 6 of them individually. They were Hideyuki Ohashi, Samanso Jaturan, Manny Melkor, Alex Sanchez, Ratanapol Saw Voropin and Zolani Peterlo. So there is the slide against champions. When we go on to the Hall of Fame slide, we see it is empty. Ricardo Lopez at the moment has no Hall of Famers on his record, of course. Hall of Famers are being added to the Hall all the time. Whether any of his opponents will be judged worthy enough to join the Hall is unknown. So at the moment he has no fights against Hall of Famers, with no win, no loss, no draw. Thus he has defeated no Hall of Famers individually, nor scored knockouts over any Hall of Famers. So on to pound for pound now. He did have 1 fight against pound for pound fighter Samanso Jaturan. Ricardo Lopez, of course, won that, so his record is 1 win, no loss, no draw against pound for pound fighters, and of course that 1 win against Samanso Jaturan. He also stopped him, so he has knocked out the 1 pound for pound he's beaten, the same Samanso Jaturan. So, I mentioned rated opponents. Now, this is a little interesting thing to remember with Ricardo Lopez. Now, Ring's rankings, for the minimum weight division did not begin when Ricardo Lopez was first fighting. So for a period of his career, there was no minimum weight. So the fighters who would have been rated at minimum weight were diluted into either light fly or flyweight. So basically, the light flyweight divisions were kind of merged with other fighters who would have been rated at minimum weight. So the effect of that is you've got more fighters vying for the spots because the minimum weight ring rankings didn't come out initially. So until those ratings came out, there are other fighters in modern era who will have full access at minimum weight to give their rated careers the proper numbers, but Ricardo Lopez is kind of caught in that bind. So these numbers are slightly reduced. Some of the fighters he beat would have been rated had the minimum weight rankings been around for the entirety of his career, but they were not. So some of those fighters were not only tackling the fellow minimum weights on where they may have been rated, they're also tackling light flyweights and flyweights fighting for those top 10 positions. So some of those fighters were not rated who would have been rated at minimum weight. So the chilling effect that has is it slightly reduces his numbers. So from the numbers what we have, Ricardo Lopez had 9 fights against top 10 fighters. That would be a bit higher. He had 8 wins, no loss, 1 draw. He had 5 fights against top 3 rated fighters, including 4 wins, no loss, 1 draw, and he had 0 fights against ring champions. Ricardo Lopez, in this reduced number, defeated 8 individual rated fighters, and he scored knockouts over 5 individual rated fighters. Some minimum weight champions, some minimum weight fighters beat minimum weight champions who were never top 10 rated because the minimum weight division wasn't around, and the flyweight division, say, could be very tough at the time. So some of those fighters were not rated. Some fighters on some careers have beaten champions who were never actually rated because their divisions weren't around at the time. You have a similar effect prior to super flyweight coming in. Fighters who were super flyweight would have been matched against the bantamweights and thus may not have scored higher as they would have done at super flyweight. With the older divisions, they started the year the ratings started, so they're different. You do have full ratings from when them ratings came along. But say if a division started in 1985, say light middleweight started before that, but say light middleweight started at 1985. If you were a fighter at light middleweight, you'd have been at middleweight, but no, I'm telling that wrong. Minimum weight, I'll say it this way so you get it. I'm confusing myself now because it is confusing. Right, Ricardo Lopez was a minimum weight champion before minimum weight rankings. So therefore, his rankings as a rated fighter are affected, and the fighters who would have been rated there are not rated there because the division rankings are not out. That's the easiest way of saying it. So anyway, I've explained it now. I'm confusing myself. But yeah, he has slightly reduced numbers. That's the easiest way of saying it. So another fighters may be affected by that, but of course on video I will highlight which fighters. So one of the main reasons for me doing the main opponent breakdown at the beginning is, and why I chose to do it on videos, these videos, the main opponents, is to highlight the kind of fighters the major opponents fighters have fought, because that gives you a better indication of what their rated record would look like, rather than, it's more hypothetical in some cases, not in all cases, because like Robinson, we know all his rated opponents, but in other cases it's a bit hypothetical. But these fighters would have been quite highly ranked. A number of them would have been ranked. So that the major opponent is the guide on what Ricardo Lopez probably would have done around the ballpark. Plus or minus 2 opponents on there. So he has 20 fights there, 19 wins and a draw. He'd have probably had between 18 and 22 top 10 rated fights. But due to the divisions coming in, the ratings not existing during part of his career, it limits his number down to 9. That, if you get me. So anyway, after that complete brain fog episode, let us crack on with the video with this fantastic little fighter. On his title fight starts now. Ricardo Lopez has a massive title fight record and been unbeaten his whole career. He was unbeaten in title fights. So Lopez had 26 world title fights. He has 25 wins, no losses and 1 draw. Now he made a staggering 24 title defences, which in modern era is still an enormous total. He also scored a very large total of 19 title fight knockouts. Now, wins against rated opponents, again, remembering the slight limitation on his numbers, Ricardo Lopez scored 5 wins against top 10 fighters in title fights, 4 wins against top 3 rated fighters in title fights, and 1 win against a ring champion. And a better way of capturing an example of what I'm talking about is, if I do the video for Alexis Arguello, he has not scored more wins against champions than top 10 rated fighters in title fights. The reason Lopez had is some of those champions were not rated because the minimum weight rankings weren't around. So in a way that highlights my point for you. So in title fights, Ricardo Lopez scored 9 wins against champions. I'll just delete that notification there. 9 wins against champions in title fights. He scored 0 wins against Hall of Famers in title fights, and of course scored that 1 win against the excellent Saman Sorjaturo in title fights. So on to titles won. Now Ricardo Lopez, multi-weight champion. Okay, the world titles he captured were the WBA minimum weight title, the WBC minimum weight title, and the WBO minimum weight title. Of course, he became a multi-weight champion when he captured the IBF light flyweight title later in his career, towards the end of his career. Ricardo Lopez also was minimum weight lineal champion of the world, but never undisputed. He never held that, IBF minimum weight belt. Thus he never held all the belts at the same time. But what Ricardo Lopez was, is to me still, like I said near the start of the video, he is one of the best lower weight fighters at modern era. Another of the best lower weight fighters at modern era, Roman Gonzalez, he will be covered in a long time to come. It's going to be a while before his video comes. But there are many fantastic lower weight fighters, and they will all be covered here over time in the future, so people can compare and contrast. But certainly to me, one of the thoroughbreds was Ricardo Lopez. Unbeaten his whole career, multi-weight champion, unbeaten 26 title fight run, 19 title fight knockouts, 24 defences, very, very good names on his resume. I once spoke to someone and they said, "Oh, he only bet about 3 good names." No, he didn't. No, he bet a lot more than 3 good names. You can go Saul Voropin and you can go Sorja Turing and Rosendo Alvarez. There's 3 names. He beat more good names than that. He beat a lot of good names down there. Some of those fighters may not be as familiar to everyone, but some of them were excellent fighters. And Ricardo Lopez, including the rematch against Rosendo Alvarez, he beat them all. So you can't give him any more credit than that. So there is the minimum weight division playlist open. It will be a little while before any more videos are added to this playlist. I'll slot them in when I can. I'm very busy on my 8 main divisions for the 18, 19, 19, 30 period. But other fighters will drop into some intermediate divisions. I've started super bantam, super feather, minimum weight and cruiserweight over the last few weeks. Few more of them will be added over time. I'll add super middleweight at some point soon with Joe Calzaghe video to kickstart that one. So yeah, more videos coming over time, but there is the video on the excellent and great Mexican fighter Ricardo Lopez. I'm the boxing librarian. I'm out for now.